Hello, today I'll be looking at what's in this exciting box from DarwinFPV, but just before we get into that, a quick reminder to like or dislike this video if you like it, comment down below, don't forget to subscribe, and if you can find a little bell icon, click on it and it might do something. DarwinFPV, to be honest, I hadn't really heard of them before. They pinged me and said they had a new whoop and would I be interested to take a look at it? So I said sure. Right now it's not available on their AliExpress store, so I have no idea about the price. I had to go back to them and double check a couple of things on spec, so I know a little bit about it. DarwinFPV, they've made a bunch of other things, flight controllers, some plug and play quads, stuff like this. This is kind of a bit unusual because it's a whoop with, it's a P&P, you have to put a receiver in there. Normally you'd expect a receiver or an SPI based board, but this doesn't have it. It is something you're not gonna lose easily. It is bright green. You get some spare props with it, get some spare screws, and that is it for the unboxing. And what you have is this little dude. It is a 75mm frame. It's got an F4 flight controller and an all-in-one 15A ESC board. It's got a 25mW VTX. The camera is a Crc Turbo EOS 2 and the motors are 1103 12,000 kV. And these are Gym Fan full-bladed props. It's got an XT30, so I had to check back with them to say, is this designed to run on 2S? Because it kind of looks like it should. And they said yes. So expect a little bit more power than a normal thing. And obviously if we're putting a regular receiver on there, we can go a little bit further than normal. But first things first is to actually open this up and see how it's put together. Because obviously you have to squidge a receiver in there. So let's do that bit first. Okay, we got it apart, and as you might expect, there's a screw here, and annoyingly, there's one here, which as you can see is underneath the antenna, so I don't know if I actually unscrewed that or it could have ripped out on the way. So we had the board here, and I was able to look up DarwinFPV on the AliExpress store just to try and find out what was what, and I think I found this board. And from that we kind of found this, and someone's tinned it for me, which is quite nice. We've got S-Bus, 5V, and the ground connection for your receiver, which is all good. We've also got the VTX here, in which the wire, this white wire, goes to RX2. So I believe that has smart audio, and again I checked that on their AliExpress store and seemed to have found one that seems to match up there, so we'll look at that. As far as fitting the receiver in, I found a little bunch of very small receivers. I decided not to go with like a full range like an XM Plus, because I don't think I'll be flying this outside very far. So I've got an original XM here, then I've got these two sort of D8 copies. I'd put this in, but I can't remember if I flashed this for RSSI, and I'm pretty sure this one gets it on a channel and it's already got wires there, so I might use that one. It's not a very good range, but I don't think I need very good range. As far as installing, I was originally thinking putting it there, but if we look under here, aside from this battery thing, it seems to have this little bit that I should be able to sort of shove a receiver under, that sort of a little shelf there just underneath. So yeah, I'm going to hook that up. I think what I'm going to have to do, as I've already got these wires on, is shove it into that shelf, pop the wires over, and just solder onto these bits. There is a little capacitor that's quite close, so be pretty careful, and I'm pretty clumsy when it comes to soldering, so fingers crossed. But let's get this hooked up, get the top back on, and then we can have a look in Betaflight. As far as Betaflight goes, there's a little bit of a pain here. You will notice that is the USB connector, and there's this here, so you will need either a right angled adapter or quite a short piece of adapter before you can actually get it away. A lot of cables have a quite sort of stiff section there to stop any breaks, so you might not be able to fit it in. I've got some right angled adapters to use, so I'll be using that. Anyway, onwards. Okay, slight change of plan. I decided to risk using the little FreeSky XM, and hopefully I figured I must have put RSSI on there, but I'm not sure, and I've just wrapped that in a bit of electrical tape, but I've bound that and that looks okay. I've got my little right angled adapter in just because I can't fit my USB connector in there, so let's have a look now on Betaflight and see what's set up. Okay, I'm plugged in and I've got my radio on, so let's see what's going on here. And yeah, quad looks okay. I don't really think I need to recalibrate there. Ports wise, this is kind of interesting because I'm pretty sure that was connected, that VTX was connected, but it hasn't got it set to anything. I checked the little description I found in AliExpress, and that seemed to suggest it was smart audio, so I'll try that on smart audio, see if it checks out. Config wise, I think it's fair to say nothing's really been done here. Everything seems to be kind of blank. I don't know why soft serial's on, and some stuff to turn off, some stuff to turn on. Let's have a look. Battery, yeah. PID tune, I expect this to look pretty default. I don't know what default it looks like anymore, but yeah, that's certainly default on the rates. Receiver wise, oh, moment of truth. Yay, look, I've got RSSI, although I've got it on aux4. This makes me think that potentially I wrote it to 8 channels. I'm just trying to think if I've got anything on a further channel. I think that's on like a channel 8 or something. Well, that's the sticks work. I've got some switches. I'll have a look at that when I get to that bit. Modes. Let's have a look. It's got an arm, it's got angle, beeper, and turtle mode. Yeah, I can cope with that. Motors, yep, not much going on there. And OSD wise, oh, that's interesting. This looks almost how I would set mine up. We use the corners, we have the warnings in the middle, so that's not offensive at all. Yeah, okay, I'm going to go through that, sort some stuff out. The other thing I will probably have to come back and do is on the throttle limit, because if we're flying indoors with a 2S LiPo, it might be a bit spicy for indoors, so I might be looking at using the scale and doing something there, but I can put that on different rate profile settings if I want to. But what I'll do, I'll have a quick hover indoors once I sort this out and decide what I need to do there, and then I'll come back and let you know. Anyway, onwards. And this is where the problems begin, which I needed to sort out. First one I had was smart audio didn't seem to be working. I had picture and everything, but it wouldn't change channel. Had a quick look at the VTX table and I thought, hey, this must be wrong because this thing only gets to 25 milliwatts. So I sent them an email and they said, oh yeah, that's the wrong table. Here's what the table should look like. And they sent me a JSON file that you can just bring into Betaflight. Apologies for the screenshot here. This is what they sent me. And it's not particularly good quality. However, that did nothing at all, and when I go into smart audio you see this, and that StatX thing is actually quite useful for a debug tool, because if you go in there you can see if your flight controller is sending packets to the smart audio device and whether they're coming back or not. So if I have a look at the StatX, you can see that stuff's being sent. We've got those sent packets, but we've got none received, and I fed that back to Darwin and they said, oh, try RC Tramp as the protocol instead of smart audio, which surprised me a bit because I thought, well, is it smart audio or is it IRC Tramp? I tried IRC Tramp, it of course didn't work. So I flicked the quad open again and had a look at it. And you guys probably picked up during the time we were having a look on the inside there that the smart audio connection is connected to RX2 up here. And I saw this and I didn't think anything of it, and that's because I can never remember which way around it is, because smart audio is actually a bidirectional protocol on a single wire, and I couldn't remember if it needed a TX or an RX. Obviously it's not going to work on an RX, it needs a TX. So what I was going to do is move that white wire from the RX2 wire here to the TX2 pad here, which looks like this. No big deal, but it's curious to see something as misconfigured as this. So then I went back into smart audio, and in my StatX I could see we're sending packets and we're receiving them. We're also getting some CRC errors. Now I wasn't sure if that was sort of the norm or a cause for concern. I wouldn't have been concerned if it was working, but it wasn't, and I had another little clue that things weren't quite right. And that's the fact I've got this question mark which says to me it doesn't understand the power it's trying to set. And if we have a look back there, you can see that in their power settings they gave me the labels of 0 and 25, and I thought that doesn't sound normal. The normal is a 0 and 1. So I changed those power settings back to 0 and 1 and everything is working fine. Well, it was almost working fine. I did notice that my RSSI value seemed bad, and I went in to double check it, and I'd set the RSSI to my channel and it had gone back to normal. Why was this? I set it again, it had gone back again, and then I went back and checked the config and I found this. And this is saying take the RSSI via an analog input instead of the RSI on a channel. So obviously I turn that off and everything's working all okay. Finally we get to fly it. These are things that I don't look for necessarily, because you kind of expect when you have something which is P&P, it's just going to work. This one needed quite a lot of work to set up, but let's try and fly it. So here we go finally with the first battery, and what I've got is just a couple of 300 milliamp hour 2Ss with the XT60s. It seems like it would take something like a 450 and that might be more appropriate, but this is all I had. And you can see in its sort of normal default position of having all that power inside, it's quite hard to deal with. I'm only using like less than 20%, and already I'm finding it a struggle. So what I decided to do is flick over to my rate profile number 2. So what I did with rate profile 2 is I just changed the throttle limit to 60%. That was a bit of a sort of guesstimate about what it would take, and that seems to do a bit of a better job. I've still got sort of hover at about 25 to 30%, and there's still plenty of power, so I could nip that down further if I wanted to, but yeah, it seems okay. Now one thing we have to ignore indoors is the picture, which looks absolutely awful, but I've noticed that the amount of 5.8 interference that I'm getting from Wi-Fi and various devices that all have jumped onto 5.8 recently is just terrible, so we'll have to really look about how the VTX copes once we're outside. And you can see I'm not doing a particularly good job on this first battery. It feels like the camera angle is a little bit high. It could go down a bit more and I think be a bit easier, but things just take a little while to get used to, so it's like it's better as I'm going. It's certainly got plenty of power, and yeah, you can zip about no problem at all. I'm just doing my normal test here, which is to fly down the side of my alley, because this goes through a couple of brick walls and things like that. Obviously we've still got an interference issue, but if the VTX is terrible, it generally completely gives up at this point. But we seem to have a picture at least. Not a particularly good one because of the interference, but still a picture. As far as flight times go, it seems somewhere around the 3 to 4 minutes. As soon as I hit low battery on this is a regular 300 milliamp hour 2S, it dropped really quickly. It was kind of like the battery is going to die if you don't bring it down to the floor immediately. Battery 2 now, which is a high voltage 2S 300 milliamp hours. I'm in horizon mode just to see how it felt doing a couple of little flips and things. I have to say, horizon mode is not my normal flying. I much prefer full acro, but when I'm in a sort of condensed area, I find it much more difficult flying full acro, so I'm just doing this to kind of try and help me out with the amount of space. And you see me hitting the floor. This is mostly about being too scared to push the throttle on enough when I've got the ceiling just above me. So I'm here just trying to do a few more manoeuvres around tighter obstacles. I still feel this isn't working quite well enough at this point. The camera angle for inside seems a little bit too pointing upwards, and I'm generally hitting some stuff when trying to go sort of slow. It's a bit tricky, so that probably needs some more work. As far as just zipping around the house goes though, that seems okay. Again, I still think I could make this a bit better. The interference we're getting is awful, but yeah, it's flying okay. But it's got a lot of power, so I'm thinking we need to take this outside and actually see how it does. And again, just hitting about 3 minutes on this battery before it goes to death. Okay, outside in the woods, so we need first off some obligatory external shots and a couple of the little speed passes. So, changed a couple of things once again. I've got the rate profile back to 1, so we've got the full power here, and you can see it flies along at 15% throttle. That's probably because this is quite a small battery for this one. Being outside more gives me even more point to think, you know what, we need a 450 milliamp hour 2S in this one. The 300 is just a little bit small. You still get 2 to 3 minutes out of it, but yeah, it's just a little bit small because of course when you're outside you want to put that power down a little bit more. And I noticed on this first battery I was complaining that the camera angle was pointing up too much in the house. Well, once you're outside and you want to get some more speed, you're like, I need more camera angle to get some more speed. I'm out in the woods here because if you're ever taking one of these tiny little whoops out, you will find flying around a field, I mean, it might be good for doing a little bit of acro practice if you want to take it up high and do a couple of flips and rolls and stuff. But it feels so dull in a big field because it looks fast going around sort of tight obstacles and close to the floor, but as soon as you're in a larger open area, it just feels very sluggish. And that's why I always take these sort of quads out somewhere like these trees. The trees are sort of thinned out a bit. They've had some work done here, and there's not quite so many of them, so it makes it a little bit easier than normal. I still get a little bit disorientated though. When I'm flying bigger quads, sometimes I basically use the noise that the quad makes to try and figure out where I am and try and get it back to me. Basically, if the noise gets louder, I'm going the right way. If it gets quieter, I'm going the wrong way and I need to turn around. That is my basic technique for telling where I'm going. Of course, in this situation, there's this path here which I can keep trying to find if I can. So at least we're outside, we can have a proper look at how the VTX handles stuff, and it's obviously a lot better than it was inside. It's still not great. I don't like the picture particularly. I mean, some of this is from the camera, but it just seems there's a little bit of pixelation that I wouldn't normally expect. So I don't rate the VTX amazingly, but you know, it's just a little VTX and a whoop, so you don't often get amazing things with it. Now, as per normal, I'm not doing any favours to this battery. This battery really should be landed on 6.6 minimum. I always manage to seem to go past that one, just because as soon as you back off the throttle, it's kind of okay, and then you go back on the throttle and it's like I'm dying. And on this battery, it was sort of dying so much that I was trying to get up on the little log I took off from and land, and it just didn't have the power. I sort of zipped the throttle up to about 40-50%, and it's like, nope, can't do it. What's that you say? More external shots from a different angle? Your wish is my command. So on this second battery, which I think I used the HV300, I've put the camera angle up more, and I'm still thinking, you know what, I still want more camera angle. This isn't as wide as it could be. As soon as you get the nose down and start getting some speed up, you're like, I could get some more out of this. But it does illustrate again that yeah, about a 450 is what we need. I'm just literally buzzing about through the trees, just having a bit of fun, doing a couple of little flips and things and going in and out. And that's what I like to do in these things. I would still argue that if you want the best indoor and the best outdoor quad, what you're looking for is a simple 1S 66mm quad for indoors and something like a toothpick for outdoors. They would give you the very best, but that means you have to buy two quads. If you just want one quad, then something like this is probably the sort of best thing you can get. So it's got enough power to fly outside and have some fun, and you can bring it down to fly inside quite reasonably. I managed to lose this path. This is a little bit harder to see. If you're ever in the woods and you can see a path really easily through your own eyes, and then you look at it for an FPV camera, it can be tricky. Sometimes you can see the path one way and then you turn around and you're like, ooh, where'd the path go? It completely depends where the sun is. But yeah, I'm having a good laugh here, and what I thought I'd do just to see how good it is crash it on purpose, which is absolutely not true. What happened is I was just messing around in the trees and I saw a little bit of a gap, and I thought, oh, can I hit that gap? And the quick answer with that one was no. I had a quick go without really lining up, and what happened is I just hit the branch and fell out of the sky. But hey, at least it gives us an idea about how good it is at taking a hit. And fortunately, this is just about viewable in the external footage as well. So here's the hit, boom, down we go. And it's small, but if you look on the right, 45 degrees up from my head, you'll see this. Smack. But it's pretty hard to hurt something that light. I just picked it up, put it back on the stump, took off again, and we're up and running. Of course you can if you hit the right stuff, but just flying over this sort of thing, you can bash into trees and the ground, and you're very unlikely to get any damage. One thing you might get, of course, is if you get a prop caught. These are just sort of push props, so they're easy to come out, but this was all fine. And here's me trying to murder my battery again, getting again around just under 3 minutes, so hence why I keep saying about a bigger battery. But hey, this time we managed to land it better. Normally that would be it for my testing, but after moving the camera angle around outside, I decided to go back and have a few more inside flights moving the camera angle down, and you can see the ducks here. And what I wanted to see is that I could fly it really slow. One of the things I really like to do with these little whoops is use them as a sort of explorer quad, get into those little places and nooks and crannies that you wouldn't be able to. I mean, they're fun to fly fast, but I also think it's really interesting and cool to try and fly in little tiny areas. So this is not particularly good, and I spent a long time bumping into things, but that's the good thing, it just bumps off, and that's no problem. And by the time I got to battery 2, I was at least able to do things a little bit faster, just finding interesting little gaps really to go through. Although on the second battery, again, loads more interference from the Wi-Fi. But yeah, fun little times, and yeah, much better to get that camera angle down in the house. I felt it worked an awful lot better. Well, lots of fun as soon as we finally got it configured right, but we did have some problems getting it configured. So exactly what has this got going for it over some other 2S style whoops like this? Because it's not exactly a market where there's no competition, and for me the Happy Model Modular 7 is still my favourite of the 2S quads, and probably outflies this, and as I remember it got a better picture having just checked the footage. So one thing this has got going for it is it doesn't use the Crazy Bee boards. Now, I've never had a specific problem with the Crazy Bee boards, but loads of people, whenever I do a review, tell me about how many of their boards smoked, just went up in flames or whatever. DarwinFPV tell me they've designed their own motors, ESCs and flight controller. So at the very least, you're not using the Crazy Bee stuff. Now, I did talk to them about what happened with the other stuff, because my point was when you have a PNP, the idea is you just put your receiver in and you should be good to go. I put my receiver in, I then spent some time fixing the other problems. The largest one being the smart audio having the incorrect connection there, and they told me that a new hire had built this one, and there was some confusion over Tramp and smart audio because he had used a Tramp thing before. So that was a case of human error and getting the new guy to hand make this one incorrectly. They tell me, of course, for production, when that gets there, it'll be correctly soldered. I also pointed out that I thought they need some documentation in there, because you just get it and it's like, okay, what am I doing? So they tell me they're at least going to put a picture of the schematic in there, so at least you know what you're doing and where you're soldering your receiver into, because you should at least know that from the get-go. As far as the bad Betaflight setup goes, because there are several problems with it, I've asked them if they want me to send them my CLI dump and they can use that as their basis. I did a whole bunch of changes that are suitable for me that may not be for other people, but I thought I'd do that. I'll also send them some notes and stuff about, for example, you know, if you're flying inside, use rate profile 2, if you're flying outside, use rate profile 1, that sort of bits, just to make things easy for people, which they're happy to accept. So that's good news. It's nice when people are prepared to take on board sort of comments and try and make their product better. So hopefully when it's out, it'll be a bit better. There's still some things I don't particularly like. I felt the picture was a little bit shaky. I mean, these things are always going to be a bit shaky because they're connected on some sort of little rubber grommets, so they can have a bit of move around. I don't think the VTX was particularly good. It wasn't bad. It'll certainly be fine for flying around. Whether I'd recommend it over anything else is a bit of an open question at the moment, because it hasn't been released and I don't know how much it's going to be. I don't know. It was certainly okay. It wasn't the best of the bunch. It certainly wasn't the worst. It's going to depend a little bit on the price and how people feel about the DarwinFPV boards instead of the Crazy Bee ones. Anyway, I certainly enjoyed flying it around and reviewing it, so many thanks to DarwinFPV for sending it on for a review. And when it gets released, I'll try and put a link down below, but at the moment it's not available. Check that AliExpress store, I'm sure it'll be there in the end. Anyway, hope that's been helpful, and I'll catch you in the next video. Bye for now. Well, you've made it to the end of the video, so thanks once again for watching. If you like what you saw, then please consider subscribing, and if you really like what you saw, then be sure to check out the link to my blog for a variety of ways in which you can help support this channel.